Welcome to the International Schools Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Taylor, and on the podcast we discuss all aspects of technology and life in international schools, with new episodes live every 2 weeks. We focus on people currently working in international schools, and we talk about life in their current country, and then we dive into some specific topics. The podcast is sponsored by Apps Events. We're a Google for Education partner and made up of former educators, all experts in helping schools integrate Google into their schools and classrooms. All training is customized for every school to make sure it has lasting impact. We're also experts on online virtual Google training, and we can deliver all our certification bootcamps and training completely online to schools. We have teams in Europe and the Middle East, Asia and the US, and we can help you wherever you are. Check it out over at appsevents.com. We're also delighted to say we're now an ISTE partner, and we're delivering the ISTE Certified Educator worldwide with our subsidiary AE Learning. ISTE certification is a pedagogy-focused, vendor-neutral, professional certification aimed at educators wishing to transform their EdTech practice. We run 2-day certification bootcamps, which are amazing fun, great networking, and will give you a huge boost both to your career and for your school. Get all the info at aelearninglab.com. Finally, the podcast is brought to you by Acer for Education. People ask us what Chromebooks and Windows laptops we recommend for schools, and after literally trying them all, we always recommend Acer. If you'd like to get more information, please just leave your email at gg.gg/Acer Education, and we'll get straight back to you. We go to Acer HQ in Taiwan every year to be part of product discussions, and they are genuinely the best thought out, cost-effective, and durable devices out there. And now, on to the interview. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be talking to Doug Bradburn, who is in Taichung in Taiwan. I've been trying to get Doug on the podcast for a while. So, Doug, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to talk with you again.
Yeah, well, so some background. Doug is the high school principal at Morrison Academy in Taichung. It's an international school, a Christian international school. I've been there. I was trying to remember if it was 3 times or 4 times. I've been there quite a bit. I've always had an amazing time. I think it's 4. I think we've done 4 events there. Is that right?
I think so. I think we've done 4.
And it's great. So, and we'll talk a bit about living in Taiwan. Taichung is, it's I think the second biggest city in Taiwan. Is that right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and a big manufacturing place, but a really interesting place, and we'll get into that. Doug, I want to talk about like your background and stuff, because it's you've got an interesting background. I know you were involved in American football and teaching in the US, and also you've become a high school principal, and I think a lot of people who are teachers in international schools, that's something they're maybe considering. Are they going to try to get into that position? And you've navigated that, so it'd be great to talk about your kind of career and how you ended up here.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're right. I probably do have a very unique pathway to this position than many people. My desire out of high school wasn't necessarily to become a high school principal. It was actually more of uncertainty. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. As I was getting out of high school, I was not, let's say, the best student in high school. And so my grades were pretty bad. My motivation for learning was pretty bad. And so I basically needed something to get me back on track. And so that, for me, turned out to be the US Navy. And so I joined the Navy right out of high school and tried to figure out and find my way where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do.
Did you join as an enlisted Navy officer, or how did you join?
Yeah, enlisted. Yeah. And so actually I had probably like 5 or 6 of the guys I was graduating with were all going into some sort of military, and all of us were enlisting. And so that's kind of where I started to get the idea. And I had an uncle who was in the Navy. And so he was telling me a lot about it. He was in like the early 70s, so quite a while ago. So I had enough people that were going and were telling me about it. And it seemed like something that at least I could get started in life, get out of the small town that I was in and try to learn a trade and get some motivation. So that's what initially launched me into, I think, a career path. When I first went in, I didn't really feel like I wanted to be a career military guy. It was okay. It was something, it was more mentally than physically challenging. But I became an aviation electrician was my actual job. And so I worked on F-14 aircraft.
Were you on aircraft carriers, or were you on a base?
Both, actually. And so when I finished my school, then my school was about a year long and very intense. And that's all you did. You just went to school. And so when I finished, I went to my base, which is in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And from there, I was attached to VF-101 was my squadron. So we were a shore duty based F-14 squadron. We were what we were called a replacement air group. So basically we trained all of the pilots for fleet. And so throughout our training phases, we would go out to the aircraft carriers with our pilots and then service them and repair the aircraft during their qualification phases. And so I went out 4 different times on 3 different aircraft carriers. And so I got some really good experience, what it's like on an aircraft carrier and just working out at sea, working on top of a flight deck, which is pretty intense.
Did you get to travel much? Because I know I was actually, I don't know if I told you, I was in the Navy University. We have these these military divisions, and I was going to join the Navy. And I took a year off traveling after university, and I was already I'm already 23. I'm probably too old to take the discipline. I decided against it, but all through school and university, I was planning on joining the Navy. That was my thing,
Nice. Wow, we got that in common. I didn't know that.
I think you have a similar thing. I think it's called ROTC in America, isn't it? It's called something different in the UK, but yeah, I did that.
Yeah. When I was in, since we were shore duty based, we didn't go out on cruises. Like a cruise would be a 6 to 9 month deployment.
Yep.
And so my squadron was just servicing or basically training pilots to go on those deployments.
Right.
But what we did do is we went to we traveled inside the continental United States a lot.
Yeah.
And so I traveled to Key West usually 3 or 4 times a year at least. Sometimes I was there for a few months at a time. But we would go down there and our pilots would go through dogfight training and do a lot of maneuvers where the weather was always really nice off the coast of Florida. And so we would go there a lot. I went to Top Gun in Miramar.
Oh, okay. So
I got to live the adventure of the movie, really. I'm a little older. So when I was in the Navy, actually Top Gun had just come out. Right. And so when we went to the school, Navy Fighter Weapons School, we actually got to see everywhere the movie was shot and be in the hangar bays and on the flight lines and so anyway,
they actually filmed. They did film it there, did they? They filmed it actually at Top Gun.
There were a lot of scenes from that area. Yeah, for sure. Miramar, Fighter Town, USA. So it was pretty cool to be out there in the midst of this movie phenomenon that was kind of sweeping the country. And so I traveled around several bases, China Lake and Yuma, Arizona. So inside the United States was mostly my travel with the Navy. But that was it. And then, I think the Navy probably helped me to start to develop a sense of leadership. I hadn't really had that before. I played football in high school and I had some element of it, but I didn't have a lot until I went to the Navy and I started to really learn sometimes the hard way of leadership, some tough lessons. And some of it was more formal training. Some of it was just because of the rank you wore on your sleeve. You were automatically a leader. People recognized you as a leader. I didn't see myself as a leader, but people, knew that I was, and I became quickly in charge of things and had a lot of responsibilities. And so then I started to develop what that meant to be a leader and how people looked at you differently and how you had kind of a different sort of accountability to people. And so that was kind of where it started, I think, as far as leadership. When I got out of the Navy, I decided I wanted to go to college and I wanted to be a teacher and a football coach.
How many years, by the way? How many years were you committed to in the Navy?
I just did 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
4 years active duty. Yeah. And so when I got out, I decided to join the Army National Guard. And and that was mainly for money. So I wanted to, I didn't have much money and I had the GI Bill.
Don't you automatically get free university from the GI Bill if you come out after 4 years?
You get money towards your education, but it's not free. So it's really a pretty good deal. You invest a small amount and you get back quite a bit. Again, I was in for so long ago that my return on investment wasn't great compared to what it is now, but it was enough. It was really pretty good.
Yeah.
But I knew I still needed money. So I was working 4 jobs, plus being in the Army National Guard. And then that was only 1 week in a month and 2 weeks out of the year and I signed up for 4 years to do that.
Yeah.
but that was another piece though that I felt like kind of helped develop my leadership philosophy. And being in the Army was very different than being in the Navy. It was just it seemed to be, even when we were together, just more intense. It wasn't quite as laid back as when I was working on aircraft, and it was just, everything about it just seemed to be, I don't know, more magnified. Yeah. And so, but I went to leadership school in the Army National Guard and in Nebraska. So for 2 weeks, I went out and did a lot of training in the classroom, in the field, working with platoon leaders, and I just got a really kind of more of a formal education, I think, for leadership, and very intense. When you're for 2 weeks, that's all you're doing, for 24/7. It's it's a lot, And
were you going to college at the same time, or was that later?
No, I was going at the same time.
Right.
Yeah. So we would do that in the summer. We would go away somewhere 2 weeks in the summer, and that would happen to be one of my summers. So in order for me to get my promotion from E5 to E6, which I was a sergeant in the Army National Guard, to be a staff sergeant, you needed to go through primary leadership and development course. And so that was the 2 week course I needed to get. And so once I did that, then I had all of my requirements and was able to get advanced in rank to staff sergeant.
Right.
And so that again helped kind of keep shaping my leadership philosophy. And so this whole time, I'm still going to college. I'm still planning on getting out and coaching. That was kind of my primary motivation for going into schools. I really wanted to coach. I think my motivation really was just, I had such a tough upbringing and never had money. My parents were divorced. I was always struggling just from neighborhood to neighborhood, getting bullied a lot. We moved around a ton. And so I felt like my calling was more of to try to help kids that might be in those similar situations.
Right. Okay.
And so in the classroom, you can do so much, but in coaching, I felt like you had a different relationship with kids, and you could do more with them. You could speak to them in a different way, and you just had more contact with them instead of just in the classroom. So that was kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a coach, and then to do that, I had to teach, which I enjoyed. I was okay with doing that, but the coaching was the piece that I really was passionate about.
Did you study education? Is that what you did at college?
Yeah. So my bachelor's was in secondary education with a primary emphasis in biology. And then later I got my endorsement in chemistry. So I taught biology, chemistry, and then a variety of different sciences.
Okay. They were my two worst subjects at school, biology and chemistry. I was good at physics, but I was terrible at biology and chemistry.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning about the body. That was kind of something I really wanted to do. I didn't really like chemistry, but for me to coach at this particular school, I needed to get my chemistry endorsement. And so I went back to school while I was full-time teaching and got my chemistry endorsement so I could move to another school, which actually it's the biggest high school in the state of Indiana right now.
Okay.
But they had a great football program and a Hall of Fame coach. And he told me if I wanted to come there, then I needed to teach chemistry. And so I was like, okay, I'll do what I got to do.
Great.
And so I went back and got it. But that, just was another piece to just kind of help me along the way to developing my philosophy of coaching, developing further my leadership philosophy. So I was an assistant football coach for this guy for 8 years and taught in this school. It's Ben Davis High School in Indianapolis, Indiana.
And for people that don't know, I've worked with a lot of schools in the US. For people outside the US, for some of these football schools, like the football coach can be the highest paid person in the school sometimes, can't they? Sometimes they do a really good job.
Yeah. Well, especially in the South. In the South and in Texas, kind of your SEC states, they are.
Yeah.
Huh?
The team in Odessa, Texas. Is it Friday Night Lights? That film about?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. But Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. All of those states. A lot of them. The coach is. That's all he does. The football coach is that's his job. They don't always have to teach. In Indiana, it's not like that. We didn't have to, like the head football coach didn't have to teach a lot, but he still had a teaching assignment. And then the coaching pay was pretty decent, but again, it wasn't six figures like you get in a lot of the southern states. But
sure.
But it was all right. The pay was still really good where we were at, and the football program was outstanding. The school right now, I think there are around 4,600 students in 4 grades.
Wow.
And so we would have about 150 players on our football team. That's grades 10 through 12. And then grade 9, they would have about 100 just in grade 9 alone. So pretty big numbers. But yeah, the program was huge. It was, if anyone came to see it, it would be kind of like going to a small college. We would typically have between 4,000 and 6,000 people at every game. We won several state championships while I was there, and we would play at the time RCA Dome, and then it wasn't quite Lucas Oil Stadium. That's where the Colts play now, but Hoosier Dome, RCA Dome. So really big crowds. We would get usually 40 to 50,000 that would come to a state championship game. And so it was just at a different level than what people may recognize or think about when they think about, oh, it's just coaching football. It was pretty big. But yeah, so that was a great experience, and it helped me to become a head football coach. So when I left that school, I went to a school on the south side of Indianapolis and became a head football coach at Pear Meridian High School for 5 years.
Right. And that was your full-time job, just being a football coach, or were you teaching still as well?
Still teaching, yeah, still at the time. They gave me a pretty good schedule, though. So I was in the weight room for one block, and then I had kind of like a football planning block, and then I taught 2 chemistry classes. So it really was pretty decent. I had time to kind of focus on everything I needed to. It was, I want to say, probably one of the toughest things I've ever had to do, just because of where I was at, and taking a head football position for the first time. You just really don't know quite what it's going to be like until you start it. And then you realize how much work is involved. And it's not even just the work. The thing that was probably the toughest was really the pressures, all of the pressures that came from community, that came from parents, that came from players, came from administration, from the media, from everywhere. We were constantly in the spotlight. It was just, it was difficult, and all that kind of weighs on you after a while, especially if you don't win games. You kind of hear it from everybody. Everybody's got an opinion how you should be doing things, and you're trying to do it the way you see it and the way that you think is the right way. And everyone else has a different way of doing it. So, and if you're not winning, it's hard to defend. Well,
that's sport is just binary. I mean, you either win or you lose, and that's what it comes down to, isn't it? That's the tough thing. You can make all the reasons for why you did a really good job, but if you don't win, you don't win.
And that's the thing. It's like I never really preached that. I mean, that was not my philosophy. Our philosophy was to be the best that we could be. I mean, I hate to say that, kind of an Army cliche, but it really was. It was all about improvement. It was like every day you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And it was always like, what are you doing today to get better? And so we kept focusing on improvement and a great positive football experience. And so everything that we did, which we did a lot off the field too, was about an experience. It wasn't about a win necessarily. Now we prepared really hard, and we worked hard, and everything we did in terms of philosophy was to be excellent, to be the best that we could be. But in the end, we weren't always results based. But that's not the world, especially when you're coaching. They are results based. If you're not winning, then there's a problem. Well, maybe it's a variety of things, but everyone thinks that they know what it is, and it's difficult to navigate. But you keep working, and we try not to focus too much on that. My strength coach at the school I was at prior to that, and the head coach, was always focused on the process, not on the product. It's always the process of becoming a champion, not the end result. But that's not society. So
and was your goal always to try to get some players to get college scholarships, like to get a bunch of people to do that?
Yeah, my job was really to help them be wherever they wanted to be. If I had a player that wanted to be in university and playing football in university, then I would do everything I could to help them. If they just wanted to have a good, positive experience, become a better person, then that's what I would do to help them. And so I would talk to a lot of colleges. I made films for every player. We do break game films down, make highlight videos for players. We would make mass copies and give them as many copies that they wanted to send out. So we did a lot to recruit our players. Parents would do some stuff too, but my job was to help them to go where they wanted to go, and to talk to the coaches that they wanted to, where they wanted to go. And so that's what I wanted to do. And again, that goes back to my philosophy of helping them, be the best they can be where they want to be, have a good experience, and become better than what they are, not just in football, but as a person.
Yep.
So
great.
Yeah.
what was that? I mean, when did you start thinking about, where did international education come on your horizon? Or was that a bit later on?
Yeah, good question, because that's kind of right where that started to happen. When I was a head football coach, after 5 years, I resigned, and when I resigned, it was really I was kind of getting burned out, but it was more of I was taking a physical toll, and so I kind of felt like it was time for me to step back and just kind of reevaluate what I wanted to do in coaching, or if I wanted to do something different. And when I stepped back, I met or I saw one of the guys I used to coach with at church, and he was telling me about a cohort program that he was in at University of Indianapolis for education leadership. And he was going through it. It was like a 1.5 year long program, and then you get your principal's license and can go into education leadership. And so I started thinking and started praying about that. And after a month or two, I felt like that was a direction that I felt God wanted me to go. And I talked to my wife, and we talked through it. And so I started into that program, and I didn't really know where it was going to lead. I just knew it would maybe open some doors and maybe help me to still be in education, just do it in a different way.
Sure.
And so when I started that, then this idea of teaching overseas started to happen. So my brother-in-law was actually at Morrison when I was in the States, when I was going through my leadership classes, and so that's how we knew about this school. And
Right.
So I started hearing that there was an opening, and I mean, honestly, I didn't have any desire to teach or work overseas. It just, from my background and from what all I had done, I'd not really known anybody that had done that. It just really wasn't ever on the radar. It wasn't ever a desire of mine.
Yep.
But it started to surface.
The whole world, until I didn't know it existed until like in my 30s even. But it's a cool option to work. People don't even know about international education. No. It's kind of a strange thing unless we're in the middle of it, but people don't know about it. And it's a cool thing.
That's so true, and that's what I didn't really realize until I started to explore it a little bit. But I didn't really fully understand until I'm here, until I'm in Taiwan, and then I started to get the sense of nobody really has an idea or a clue of what it's like. Or I talked to my friends from back home and even my family, and they're like, "What are you doing? Why are you over there?" It's like just still didn't really have a grasp of what it means or what it is. And I mean, I'm thankful that I'm here, but then I'm like, I wish I would have done this like 20 years ago. I wish I would have done.
And what was the first position? What was the first job you got? Like, what did you apply for?
Yeah, so at the beginning, when I was coming here, it was to teach middle school science and freshman biology, and it was at the Kaohsiung campus, and so it wasn't even in Taichung, and it wasn't in leadership, and it wasn't really coaching necessarily. I mean, it was just probably something that was totally out of my comfort zone. I had taught middle school science my first couple years out of college, but not really a strong desire to teach that level, that the middle school level of kid. But that was the opening, and my wife and I really prayed a lot about if this is something we needed to do. And I'd interviewed at some other jobs. I had other job offers, but nothing just felt right. I mean, it was really more of I felt like every door was closing for some reason. Either it wasn't paying enough, or it wasn't right timing for a position. It was in a different place than I wanted to be. This was the only thing that made sense. And even looking at the job itself and the pay, oh my gosh, the pay from what I was making till here was something that nobody in their right mind would probably ever do. I mean, It was a huge drop from what I was getting paid. But
really,
but my wife and I both felt like, and we had at the time 3 small kids, the package was definitely livable. We felt like it was okay. We didn't expect to come here and get rich, which nobody would expect to do, but we felt like it was still a calling from God to move us in this position for some reason. And we just wanted to be obedient to that. And so
in terms of the package, I guess, people think about it in terms of like, you have 3 children, and if you want your children, say, to have like a private education, and your school is a really good quality education, that's kind of that's worth a lot as well, isn't it? I guess that's something people also, and housing allowance and all these things, it's a lot of extra things that come on with an international school job.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dan, because you can't just look at the base salary or just kind of and compare it to America. And living in Taiwan, the cost of living is cheaper. And then when you look at the big picture of everything, you got 3 kids tuition, you do have a nice apartment, and it's all paid for. The utilities are pretty cheap. Food is cheaper. Everything is relative, and it is cheaper. And so for us too, it was, our kids were going to get a good education, a good school, Christian school. They'll have a great foundation. And when they leave here, we felt pretty good about where they were going to be and, where this was going to direct them in life. And so that was for us more valuable than the paycheck for sure. Yeah.
And how did you end up moving to Taichung then?
So I was only in Kaohsiung for a few months, and then my superintendent was talking to me about positions opening in leadership in Taichung, and I was interested because I had just finished my cohort, all my education leadership classes, and actually passed my exam to get my license right before I left for Taiwan. I mean, literally 2 weeks before I left for Taiwan, right. I finished my principal's license. And so I was looking for something if something opened up. So he talked to me about a learning coach position. And initially, actually, he was talking to me about there was a principal's position at our Morrison Taipei campus. And so I told him I'd be interested in being included in the short list that he had. That didn't work out, and which was great. I was totally fine with that. But then this learning coach position came open, and I felt pretty comfortable with that. And my kids, especially my daughter, is very athletic, and this school had a lot of bigger athletic programs, and so I felt like this would have been a good fit, a bigger campus, more programs. Learning coach job was, I thought, was a good next step in leadership, and so I took it, and we finished our year in Kaohsiung and then moved north to Taichung that summer. And I've been here now, I think it's 8 years since then. Wow. So I've been in this campus for 8 years, and Taiwan total 9 years.
Great.
So, yeah.
Great. And how did so our friend Dave Freeman, I think you took over his job, is that right, or the other way around?
No, actually, we were teaching, we were both learning coaches in different places.
That's great, yeah.
Yeah, so he was already here in Taichung, but he was the elementary middle school learning coach, and I was the high school learning coach. Right. And so that's when we became good friends and worked together quite a bit. Did a lot of meetings and conferences and things together. And so, and then after I took this job, then he became learning coach for me when I was the principal here for I think 1 or 2 years, and then he took another job outside of Morrison after that.
And how did the transition go to be principal? Was that like the job came through and you applied for it, or did they kind of hit you up and say, Doug, we want you to do this job, or because you did a great job?
Well, it seemed to me there were discussions, I think, before I had even moved to Taichung about the other principal that was here leaving pretty soon, and I didn't really know anything about potential leadership positions other than the one I was going to take. But apparently, it sounded like they were thinking that I might be a good candidate for that position. And so I was the learning coach for, I think, I don't know, it was a year or 2 years. And then they started talking to me about the other principal getting ready to leave and if I'd be interested in taking over. And so, again, one of those things where I talked to my wife about it, we prayed about it. And we knew that if I did that, that would mean we were going to probably need to commit for a longer period of time. They were asking for 4 years. The contract was only 2, but they were hoping that that I would stay for at least 4 years as the new principal. And so anyway, we through all of that, then I think that in those conversations, we were feeling like this was a good fit, that I was comfortable moving over one door from my old office to the new office and taking this on. So that's kind of how it happened. And then I had 1 year as the learning coach, knowing that I was already approved by the school board to take over the next year as the principal. And so for that 1 year, it was really kind of nice because I got a lot of good, deep conversations with the current principal, got to see kind of firsthand everything that he was doing and kind of combine it with my philosophy and his kind of pedagogy of education. And kind of form my own before I took over the position. Could kind of envision myself doing it and what I would do, things I would change, stuff like that.
Sure.
And so then I was able
generally, I mean, I know it's a very broad question, but I mean, is it a more stress? Do you find it more stressful, or is it? Do you find it kind of something you felt like you were ready to do?
Being the principal here.
Yeah, being the principal. I mean, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I find it a lot more stressful. It's very, very comparable to being a head football coach.
Yeah.
So having had that experience, I could draw back on it.
Yeah.
And the similarity is really because you get so many different pressures from so many different areas.
Yeah.
And you never know kind of from day to day where it's going to come from. Or, I mean, a school is so dynamic. There's just so many things that happen, and you're dealing with so many people. You know, you've got priorities, and you've got, you know, things you want to get accomplished, but life happens, and you deal with situations as they come up, whether it's a student or a staff or a parent. It seems like it's very challenging, but it's also ever changing.
About the job is it seems it's almost like a 24/7. Because I mean, when I've been out hanging out with you, like we run the Google Summit on the weekend, you know, so you were obviously involved in that, but you were off doing other things. You had, I think, 2 evenings. You had evening functions with parents and things. You had another different school event, sport event or something during the day, and some theater things. So you were kind of like, it seems like there's a lot of evenings and weekends and things involved in that job as well.
Yep, you're exactly right. That's what makes it tough. The tough thing is just trying to balance your time and delegate the things that you can delegate, and manage what you can manage, and trying to keep on top of everything is a daily challenge. And so that's not something you can do first year, second year. I just finished my 5th year, and I'm still learning to do that better. This year is an anomaly. It's hard to compare this year to anything, because nobody has seen anything like this before. But I do think that there were some things that I had done in my past that helped prepare me for this semester of pandemic. But I tell you, just the job in and of itself, without having to deal with all of that, is enough. And it does keep you busy and does keep you going in a lot of directions. I think the best thing to do is, I mean, you try to stay centered. You try to stay, keep things in perspective. Sure. And don't make too much of issues. Don't think too much about it. Try not to take it home with you. You manage what you can manage, and sometimes you have to say no, or I can't, and that's okay. And then the rest of it's just kind of priorities, and you keep your priorities on your kids and on your staff and on your school. And then in the end, I'm human, and I can only do so much, and sometimes that's okay.
Now, when you get to be principal of an international school like you are, or of a high school, what's the next stage? I mean, I presume there's like a director position for the school. Is that something that people would traditionally move to next, or potentially, or what would be another move if you wanted to continue upwards in the international school management?
Yeah, hierarchy? I think most international schools have either a superintendent or a head of school, whatever they call them. There is another step above if you wanted to take it. For me, it's not really a desire. I'm not really wanting to move in that direction. I think this position's enough. I mean, it definitely has enough challenge for me. So as far as if there were another level, that would be it. You know, and I think a lot of people probably look at it as they could go up as the head of school or superintendent. But I think a lot of principals just look for other principal jobs as opposed to going up to the next level, because it comes with a completely different set of responsibilities. And I think the further you go up, the further you distance yourself from students too. Yep. And I think that's another very difficult thing. And that's something I really had to adjust to as the principal here, is trying to keep connected with students, because you're out of the classroom now. You don't see them day to day like you used to. Yep. And now you're almost out of touch with, you know, what they're doing daily, and what they're involved in and what their needs are. And so you look for ways to try to stay connected, and whatever it is, whether it's, you know, attending events or having running small groups, advisories, or, you know, mentoring, things like that. And you just try to look for ways to stay connected with the kids and be in the classrooms. And so, the further you go up, and then when you become head of school or superintendent, now you're usually at a central office, even, outside of your campus. So you keep moving away further and further. So that's definitely not why I got into education. So wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, so that's a good transition to talk about Taiwan. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, I love Taiwan. We're maybe thinking about a move with the family to Asia, and Taiwan's one of the places. Yeah, I like Taichung. It's kind of a bit different. Not as many foreigners. It's a bit more of an experience, in Taiwan. Like, do you think you're going to stay there a while? Like, what's your plans longer term?
Well, I have my oldest daughter just graduated this year, so 2 weeks ago. So I have 3 kids. She was the first to graduate, and I've got a junior son, or to-be junior son, and then a sophomore son. And so we're looking at probably getting them all through Morrison, and then possibly going back to the States. I mean, honestly, I really like Taiwan, and I've loved living here. We'll start our 10th year this summer, and I've really enjoyed it. I enjoy the people, the environment, the weather. I mean, it's just so laid back compared to America, and it's just a different kind of mentality of the people here. And so,
sorry, go
yeah. I mean, having been here just several times that you have, whether it's, the App Summit or going to Taipei, it's just kind of different. And it's just something I've gotten used to and that I enjoy. And if we go back in 3 years and my youngest son graduates, I'll definitely be sad. I mean, I will do it probably if that's where we feel called back to, but it would not be an easy decision still.
Yeah, so I want to talk a bit about living in Taiwan, because there's probably some people listening who, different teachers and people listening who are looking at different countries. And Taiwan's interesting. It's got a strange political status. You can read about it online, but it's the thing. I noticed is it's definitely. I haven't spent much time in mainland China, but Taiwan is much friendlier, and I think everyone says this. Like, the people are, everyone is friendly. Taxi drivers, there's people. It's like people are very, very friendly there.
Yeah, I think that's the very first thing that I noticed. I visited here 2 years before I moved here, and I was here for 2 weeks, like over a Christmas break. And from the very beginning, there's 2 things at least that stick out in my memory. One is the people were unbelievable. I had never been to a place where so many people, especially people that didn't speak a lot of English, were so friendly towards me and my family. And 2 were the smells. It was just always... There's different smells everywhere you go in Taiwan. So those are the 2 things that stuck out. But yeah, having been here for so long, it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't, just a one-time thing. You're here and you met a few friendly people. It's like consistently. And it's not just even like in America, you may come across people in a store or a restaurant that are friendly towards you. But here, it's like people will go way out of their way routinely to make sure that you're okay, or that they meet your needs. Or, I mean, going to stores and ordering things, sometimes you'll see people running to get it and running back, and asking for directions on the street. I mean, people, instead of giving you directions, they will show you, they'll walk you to a near location. Or I even had one time I was in Taiyuan looking for something I was with Larry Dilly, and we were asking directions for this restaurant. And this lady was trying to tell us, and she said, "Here, I'll just show you." And she took us to her car, and she actually drove us to the restaurant.
Wow.
Like, who does that? And it's like 2 guys. It's like 6 o'clock at night, and she's like, "Hey, come on, I'll take you," and just drive.
Yeah.
Who does that? And so, but that's kind of typical here. I mean, the people are just amazing, and they're so selfless. And so, living in Taiwan, you learn of a new culture that's so different than the one that I grew up in. That just makes you just enjoy being here and being a part of these people.
Now, I mean, the place most people would go is Taipei. That's the capital. And I mean, Taipei is interesting because I like it because it's very green. It's surrounded by big, sort of lush green hills. You can see it from everywhere. It's a big city. I mean, did you spend much time in Taipei, or not really?
No, not really. I wish I could spend more. Anytime I go up there, I enjoy being up there. Seems like there's a lot more. I still eat a lot of Western foods. My diet hasn't changed a whole lot, and they have a lot more, not just even Western, but even European, and just a huge variety of restaurants.
Sure.
And so I love going to Taipei, but it is a little more culturally mixed in terms of Western and some European. And and more people speak English there, and they're used to more people that are foreigners there. And so it's different than Taichung, different feel. You have all those little small back roads, those alleys that are full of restaurants and, pubs and just places to hang out. And Taichung is just different. It doesn't have that feel.
Yeah. So Taichung, for people who don't know, Taiwan's kind of like, if you imagine like it's kind of it goes north to south, I guess. And there's a high-speed rail goes all the way down the west coast and connects all the major cities pretty much. And Taichung's like the next city below Taipei, isn't it? So it's a huge manufacturing. I don't know. I know most bikes in the world get made there, some other things as well. So it's a big city, isn't it? It's like a major city.
Huge. Yeah. It used to be 3 behind Kaohsiung, and now it's overtaken it since we've been here as the number 2 most populated country. And there are a lot of businesses here, a lot of manufacturing. So it's been more and more, even military personnel, Nike, Corning, Pratt and Whitney, a lot of companies. And so they, bring people from overseas, and I get to meet a lot of the parents because they're looking for schools and trying to get their kids into Morrison. And so,
what's it like as a foreigner? Like, is kind of, I guess, expat life? Is there a lot of foreigners, and are there many schools other than Morrison where people like English language schools in Taichung?
There aren't too many, really. There's really only 4, or actually depending on how do they classify themselves, but there aren't many, and some of them are bilingual and not true English speaking. So these companies that are bringing foreigners overseas, that's been a huge issue, that some of the employees don't want to come if there aren't good schools for their kids, or if the school is a bilingual school, then it's too hard for them to communicate. So Taichung is just very limited in the number of international type schools, and we're a Christian international school. And so even though you don't have to be a Christian to come here, we're still capped by our school board numbers and what they see is where they want to keep our class sizes and our teacher to student ratios. And so that makes it a little more challenging for these companies to come in, and it lessens their choices. So they really only have 1 or 2 choices.
Right.
And so it's just, it's very hard, I think, for companies to come in and have a good option for an international school for their kids. And so I think it makes it harder for them to bring in the employees that they want to come in.
Yeah.
So.
And what's it like socially? I mean, I know it's kind of broad term, socially, sports, things like that. Like, how do you find it in terms of living there?
It seems to have gotten a lot better, even with the number of pubs. And I know, we have friends at AmCham and American Chamber of Commerce, and just looking at the advertisements and things they have with social events and stuff. It's nothing like Taipei from what I've seen in Taipei, but it's not too bad. And then we have a baseball stadium down the street, which now that's opening back up, and we've gone to a lot of baseball games. There's not a lot of other sporting type events here, at least that we would go see. So socially, it's
a lot of participation sport. I mean, is there a league? Can people play like basketball and soccer and things like that? Like, is that kind of thing happen?
It does, but it's very limited. I mean, even just having kids that were involved in sports and trying to get them into clubs or to like intramural type, sports, there are very few options, especially if you don't speak Chinese.
Right.
Then it makes it even harder. So yeah, it's limited. That's been the tough thing for us, and trying to keep our kids involved in things too, and not having very many options.
Sure.
But our school has done a good job, and we've got people here at our school. Like we're just finishing a 2-week camp now. Well, it was 2 1-week camps with basketball, soccer, arts and crafts. And so it's kind of one of those things where there's a need, and then someone steps up and then fills the need with kind of like an entrepreneurial spirit, just to start a small business to provide a service to our kids and our community.
Sure.
So that's kind of what I've seen more happen with our community, which has been great. And it's a huge benefit to our kids.
And what about learning Chinese? I mean, I know you were studying Chinese when I was there. I mean, is it how are you finding it? Is it a realistic proposition to learn to speak, do you think? I mean, it's realistic. People do it, but is it for you?
I'm not there yet. I I feel embarrassed anytime I tell someone I've been here for 9 years and I'm not fluent in Mandarin, especially if I tell any local people, because they ask me how long I've been here, and they can ask in Chinese, and I know, and then I'll tell them, how many years, and it's then they're like, and you don't speak Chinese? I'm like, no, not yet. So it's on my still list of things to do, which it may still be on there for a while, but it is a bit challenging. It is something that you really kind of need to devote yourself to. I don't know if Morrison could do any better. I mean, we do a survival Chinese class for any of our new staff that come in, but it scratches the surface. I mean, that's about it. I mean, it is survival, but I wish there would be even, and they do offer, I mean, to pay if you want to do private lessons, and there's a certain amount of money that they'll pay for that. So there is that. You just got to take the initiative, but then find the right people.
Sure.
But it does help a lot if you know some basic language, when you walk out, go to a store or go to a shop or somewhere. So I'll keep working on it though.
Program, or do you do Chinese lessons as well in the school for the children?
Well, our kids do. I mean, most of the kids will have Chinese until middle school.
Yeah.
And so after 8th grade, then they have a choice of Spanish or Chinese. Sure. And so it's kind of up to them, however they want to do it. Most universities require at least 2 years of the same language. And so some, they just choose either one they want to go. So for our kids, they've got some options. Our staff, they don't really have any options unless they go outside to a local, kind of like a Bushy-Ban or some kind of a language school.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
It's. I mean, I would love to learn Chinese. It's just, one of those things. It's just, I know you've got to really dedicate a lot of time to it. I think it's not an easy. I mean, although speaking is, I mean, the written language is a whole different level of difficulty, isn't it? You can learn, you can get the speaking without the written potentially.
Yeah, I can do the pinyin okay, so I can actually read a decent amount of pinyin, but the zoying and the juing or bopomofo. Those are when you start learning the sounds that the characters make. I can't do that at all, unfortunately. But I think a lot of people think that that's the best way to start, is to learn the bopomofo. But I haven't. And it's funny too, because like I said, just about this job and time, sure. You do kind of need to choose what you do and where you prioritize your time. And I learn enough to get by, but it's not as much as I would like. But it's also something I just haven't devoted a lot of time. Now this year I'm not going back to the States, and so after today I'm on a vacation for a few days, and then I'm gonna look for a tutor, or maybe if I can get a couple days a week at a language school. Sure. and try to just brush up now that I've got some extra time.
Yeah, I mean, when I've been with you, I was impressed. I mean, you definitely you communicated everywhere we went. You can get by definitely. I mean, to me as an outsider, it seemed like a pretty decent level. But I'm obviously not.
Appreciate that. Builds my confidence, Dan. Thanks.
Exactly. Look, Doug, it's a real pleasure to talk. I know we're almost up to the hour, so that was great. It's a really interesting talk about your whole journey to becoming a principal and a bit about Taiwan. So thanks very much for coming on the podcast. Yeah, happy to do it, man. Anytime. Sorry it took us a little while. Like the first time I think you asked, we were right in the middle of dealing with pandemic stuff, and so it took a little more time to kind of get through some things. And now I'm finding time to get the things I want to do, like talk to you. So it's good. Yeah, well, where's a good place for people to connect with you online, like Twitter or LinkedIn? Like, where are you the most active? Or I'm really probably more of a social media consumer. Yeah. So, but I followed. I do a lot on Twitter. At least I do. I have a lot of people that I follow, and I read what they put out. And so that probably is the easiest. Or Facebook, sure. Which I still have connected with a lot of former students and teachers and people that I know through Facebook. So those are probably the two that I look at the most. Great, Doug. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to talk. Yeah, same here, Dan. Talk to you soon, man. Take care.